So, we have come to it at last. My final review in the Skywalker Star Wars saga. If you count these past three films, some choose not to. I'm kind of in that, that group, if you will. But I said I would review the sequel trilogy, and so I am going to keep my promise to those of you that have been watching from the very beginning until now, at the end. And this is the very first time I actually watched Rise of Skywalker. I didn't go see it in theaters. And I may have saw a few scenes here and there on YouTube. I basically knew exactly how the movie was going to go down because I didn't care about spoilers. After, Last Jedi, which I reviewed last time, left a very bad taste in my mouth. And fortunately, it is on Disney Plus. It officially aired on May the 4th, along with the series finale of Clone Wars. By the way, I also did a Season 7 review of Clone Wars, in case you're a fan of Clone Wars. Still thinking about maybe doing a series review of Clone Wars, maybe next time or maybe not. I haven't really decided yet. But at the same time, today we will be reviewing Disney Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, which was released in December 2019. So spoilers, we will be talking about spoilers. I know it's the newest of the Star Wars films, but I just want to throw out the spoiler warning before we continue. Producer, just like with Episode 7 and 8, is Kathleen Kennedy. She's also the current president of Lucasfilm. I'd just like to mention that. Just so you can have somebody to blame. It is directed by J.J. Abrams. He's directed a lot of stuff, including Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. This time around, he doesn't have Lawrence Kasdan as one of his writers. And as I pointed out already, I think that if they would have made Lawrence Kasdan like the head writer of the sequel trilogy, where everything had to go through him, then I think the sequel trilogy would have ended up much better because, as I pointed out already, he also helped write Empire Strikes Back, as well as Return of the Jedi, and of course, The Force Awakens. So that would have made sense. But Chris Terrio was the writer along with J.J. Abrams' Rise of Skywalker. In case you're wondering what Chris Terrio is best known for, Batman v Superman. Yeah, I'll just let that sink in. And the score, for the last time, is done by the legendary John Williams. So it's his last bow as the composer for the Star Wars saga. And I believe he has a little cameo somewhere in Episode 9. Starring Daisy Ridley as Rey, along with John Boyega as Finn, Oscar Isaacs as Poe, Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, either or. Let's see, Dormel Hall Gleason as Hooks, along with Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. As I've mentioned before, there are some what I consider to be cameos, where these individuals were only in a few scenes, not many, so I kind of count them as cameos. The best two were three. There were three cameos I liked. Billy D. Williams finally brought back to Star Wars as Lando Calrissian. For the few moments we got Lando, awesome, enjoyed it. You can still see that Billy D. Williams has a great personality and charm to him. And then we also got another appearance from Mark Hamill. And to JJ's credit, they tried to do right by Luke Skywalker in Episode 9. So props to you, JJ, for that. So Mark Hamill returns as Force Ghost Luke. And then you also have Kelly Marie Tran. She was in a few scenes as Rose Tico, not as many as in Episode 8. So I'm kind of considering it a cameo of sorts. Yeah, there. And of Ian McDiarmid. Okay, so I'm going to talk a lot about Ian McDiarmid in Episode 9. And I would say his performance is good. He's always great as Palpatine. But there's just one teeny tiny problem with them bringing back Ian McDiarmid as the Emperor, as Palpatine, Darth Sidious, whatever you wish to call him, the Senate. Yeah, that small problem is Return of the Jedi. And of course, this one cameo is the one I just don't know. I really don't know. It felt very uneasy watching it. The late Carrie Fisher, now, as some of you know, her scenes as Leia in Rise of Skywalker were done very cleverly by J.J. Abrams because of the fact that she was not alive to shoot the scenes for Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. So what did J.J. do? Several things. For one thing, he took scenes of her that were on the editing room floor of Force Awakens. I don't think they used any scenes from Last Jedi. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I think they used some mocapping. I think they used body doubles. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. I mean, to be honest, I think it would have just been better for them to say in between episode 8 and 9, Leia Organa dies. That probably would have been the best thing to do, but they didn't. So they had to make do with what they had because, obviously Leia is a very important character in the Star Wars saga, specifically the original trilogy as well as the sequel trilogy. So it takes place about a year after the events of Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and I give JJ credit for that. At least there's actually some sort of time jump between episodes 7, 8, and 9. As I mentioned, I didn't really care for that too much in episode 8. I think that was like the first problem that occurred, but that review's already been said and done. So the galaxy is now under the rule of the First Order under Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. And all of a sudden, there's a message sent out to the galaxy from Clone Palpatine. Because if you go by the book, it's actually a clone of Palpatine. But it's still his essence. So it's similar to the Expanded Universe Dark Empire trilogy where Palpatine had like clones. And after the events of Return of the Jedi, his essence traveled back to Biss. I think that was the Sith homeworld in the Dark Knight trilogy. And he would just take one of his clones for a while. They would become corrupt and deformed because of all the dark side power that Palpatine has. And then he'd have to transfer a few times. And that's where I think JJ and Chris Terrio kind of sort of borrowed from the Dark Empire. Yeah, kind of sort of. So he sends a message out that the galaxy has like 16 hours to surrender because the final order, the Sith fleet under Clone Palpatine, is going to come out and going to destroy any planet that resists. By the way, the Death Stars are basically repurposed Imperial Star Destroyers. I mean, they look a little different. They're a little bit bigger, but they're basically just an Imperial Star Destroyer that the design team just made a little bit bigger. And they just put a big giant gun on it, Death Star tick. Oh boy, now it's on Star Destroyers. Yay. So now you have both Kylo Ren trying to find the Wayfinder. You have General Leia sending out resistance agents trying to find a path to Exegol or information about Palpatine's plans. And so you have this race for MacGuffins. And Kylo gets the Wayfinder MacGuffin. There's two of them, by the way. He gets the first one. He travels to Exegol. And you go down into this lightning planet covered in clouds and this weird block stone thing. It's gigantic. And you go into the planet on this lift. And you see these Sith statues. And you have the eerie music in the background. Brilliant score, once again, by John Williams. And Palpatine is communicating to Kylo, talking about how Snoke has trained him well. And then Kylo's like, I killed Snoke. And then Palpatine's like, my boy, I made Snoke. So there we go. The mystery of Snoke has been solved. Yay. And Palpatine also is like, I've been every voice inside your head. You've seen the commercials. You know probably all the stuff we're going to talk about. And so Palpatine offers a new empire to Kyle. He offers the Sith fleet. All Kyle has to do is go kill Rey. But Kyle doesn't want to kill Rey because he's got a little thing for her. Okay, that's cool. They're Force dyad now. And so Rey's still training to become a Jedi. She's trying to commune with the Jedi that have come and gone. They won't speak to her. She's angry about it. She accidentally breaks BB-8. And meanwhile, you have Finn and Poe and R2 and Chewie, I think, and the Millennium Falcon getting information about the Palpatine's plan. and they get chased, and they do this stupid light skipping, which is really anti-canon, especially if you go by New Hope, where Han Solo tells Luke that, the nav computer has to kind of sort of calculate jumps, or they may end up in the middle of a planet or a sun, and that would ruin your trip real quick now, wouldn't it, kid? I think they forgot about that scene. So the light skipping was stupid. It was dumb. But there's many scenes that are dumb, like the fact that they brought back Palpatine. And they try to make the case that that was the plan all along. No, we're not buying it. No. Obviously, Snoke was meant to be the main baddie till the end. You can thank Rian Johnson for that one. So anyways, you have, Rey training with Leia. Leia's now a Jedi Master, apparently. And she's also General of the Resistance. And then you have the group come back together on this Resistance planet. It's a jungle planet. I don't know what it's called. I didn't care. And Leia sends this team off to Desert Planet 3. Or if it's 4 if you count Geonosis. Do you count Geonosis as a desert planet? Because I count Tatooine as Desert Planet 1. And Jakku as Desert Planet 2. I'm confused. But let's just call it, for the sequel trilogy's sake, Desert Planet 3. Whereas Jakku is Desert Planet 2. And this planet they're going to is Desert Planet 3. So Leia sends Rey and Finn and Poe and C-3PO and BB-8 and Chewie in the Millennium Falcon off to Desert Planet 3. And that's where a Sith assassin went and found Rey's parents because they hid her on Desert Planet 2, a.k.a. Jakku. And they were nobodies, but it turns out that the son was like a failed clone of Palpatine. He turned out to be a decent guy. And now this is going by the book. That part's not in the movie, okay? So a lot of people were wondering at this point before the book came out, like, well, when the hell did Palpatine hook up? I mean, he got to be Emperor and Darth Lord of the Sith and the Senate. I mean, who would, right? It turns out, according to the book, Palpatine Jr. is nothing more than a quote-unquote failed clone that got away, fell in love, and they had Rey. But whereas Palpatine Jr., he had no force powers. Rey obviously had dim force powers. And even though Palpatine has sent Kylo Ren off to kill Rey, the truth is Palpatine doesn't want Rey killed. He wants his granddaughter brought back. So it's kind of like a twist that's really doesn't make sense when you think about it too much, because wouldn't he have just asked Kylo to bring Rey before him? Oh, didn't he do that before? Oh, that's right. He told Darth Vader to not kill Luke, but to bring Luke before him, and only together could they bring Luke to the dark side in Return of the Jedi. A far superior movie than this. So, yeah, kind of conflicting. Of course, you have Rey and you have Kylo having their little back and forth. And, oh, yeah, the Knights of Ren have returned. Oh, boy, they're standing all edgy, walking around all tough. And I always wondered, why don't the Knights of Ren, who are apparently dark side users, why don't they have lightsabers as well? They have like these blunt weapons. It really doesn't make any sense. They don't talk. They don't have any dialogue. They're kind of like glorified stormtroopers or death troopers. I don't know. But they're all edgy, standing on rocks like they're some sort of rock band. He's shooting a musical video. I know I'm not the only one that came up with that one. I think that was Mahler that made that one up. I don't know. It made sense, though, at the time. And so Kylo and Rey are communing back and forth. Kylo's still trying to get Rey to turn to the dark side, because he obviously doesn't want to kill Rey. He's not going to go along with Palpatine's so-called plan, even though that's not really Palpatine's plan. I guess Palpatine's just being a puppet master. He knows that Kylo's not going to kill Rey, but he knows that he could get Kylo to bring Rey to him. I guess that's some 4D chess action. I mean, that's the way Palpatine is, though. He's a puppet master. But for some reason, they get some sort of space reject from Planet of the Apes to reconstruct Kylo Ren's helmet. And honestly, I didn't see the point. They should have just left it shattered. That was one of the few things I actually liked about Episode 8. Did I mention that in that review? If I didn't, I should have, because that was one of the few things, was the fact that he decided to smash his helmet and decide to be his own person. But we're talking about Episode 9 now. So at, Desert Planet 3, as we're calling it, where they're having some sort of Burning Man like festival, they happen to run into Lando. And him and Luke have been trying to find the Wayfinder MacGuffin. They tracked the Sith assassin to planet Desert 3 or Desert Planet 3. And apparently his ship remains. Nobody scavenged it. Nobody stole the ship, even though it's been sitting there for quite a while. But no one could ever find the Sith assassin, who fell through some sort of quicksand and got eaten by a big giant worm. The end. And he used the Sith dagger that C-3PO, even though C-3PO can translate, 6 million forms of communication. Is it million or billion? I think it's 6 million. Or is it more by the time of the sequel trilogy? I don't know. But apparently he cannot officially translate it because for some reason it's against his programming. So they kind of have to yeet poor 3PO on a planet called Kijimi. So we haven't gotten there yet, but we're still on Desert Planet 3. Oh yeah, they fly now apparently because we've never seen stormtroopers fly before in various other Star Wars material. Not in video games, not in the comics, not in the Clone Wars. It's the first time we've ever seen stormtroopers with jetpacks. They fly now. Yes, they do. And another thing that I didn't like about this was they introduced a new so-called force power. I guess it's unique with the force dyad users, the ones that are connected like Rey and Ben. Force teleportation or teleportation. I don't think that's how the Force works, in the words of Han Solo. That's not how the Force works. So it's a new force power that seems pretty dumb. I just don't like it. That's just my opinion on it. I don't get it. So while Rey is communing with Kylo's trying to find out where she is. And so he does like the Force teleport. He grabs this necklace that this other girl gave her, and they're able to run an analysis and determine that she's on, Desert Planet 3, so Kylo heads for Desert Planet 3. And so they are chased by those stormtroopers. They fall into the same hole or quicksand that the Sith assassin fell into and was eaten by the worm. Rey uses Force Heal to heal the worm. And I don't really have a problem with Force Heal because Force Heal has been around before in the expanded universe, as well as, more commonly in Star Wars video games. So I'm okay with Force Heal. Now, as they get to the Sith assassin's abandoned ship, which has once again not been scrapped or stolen by somebody else, it's just sitting there. They're getting ready to take off, but Rey senses that Kylo's coming, and then that's where you see the epic teaser trailer for Rise of Skywalker with her in the middle of Desert Planet 3 of her lightsaber, and then you have a TIE interceptor, it looks like a TIE interceptor heading for her, and then she does the sweet jump, and in the movie she cuts the wing off one of the wings off the TIE interceptor, so the main cockpit that Ben is in, or Kylo's in at this time, it rolls and explodes. So why is Ben not dead there? It literally rolls, it explodes. He should be dead. I don't care if he's a Force user. I guess he used like his mom's ability, from episode 8 to protect herself from an explosion. I guess that's what he did because he walked out of it just fine. He wasn't limping. His clothes didn't look tattered. I mean, he took his mask off. I guess the mask protected him. I don't know. And so Chewie got captured by the Knights of Ren. And how did a big, tough, badass Wookiee get captured by stormtroopers and Knights of Ren? Okay. And, to their credit, JJ did put 2 transports on the ground. But as, one transport's taken off, they think that Chewie's on that transport, so Rey tries to stop it. You have Kylo, he's also holding it back, and so they're having this force grab, this force, rope pull. And, Rey gets so angry, and this is why Kylo did it, was to, get the dark side out of Rey, because now Kylo knows from Clone Palpatine that she is also a Palpatine, that she is Palpatine's granddaughter. By clones, of course. So Rey gets really angry, and Force lightning comes out of her hand, and she blows up the transport. She thinks she killed Chewie, and then they manage to wander off to the Sith ship, and then they fly away to some rocks, and they're hiding in the rocks, but for some reason the Knights of Ren are also hiding in the rocks, and they're just chilling. Both ships are just chilling in the rocks. Like, the Knights of Ren are not attacking the ship, the Sith ship that they're aboard, the Sith assassin ship. They're just chilling. They're just like, okay, we'll just sit here with them, and we'll just wait for them to go to some planet, and we'll just follow them. You could attack them with your ship and board them. Or kill them. That's an option too, but they don't. And so obviously Rey's sad that she killed Chewie, allegedly, but Chewie hasn't been killed. Oh, and there's supposed to be a spy within the First Order that's leaking information to the Resistance. That's how they find out all this information about the 16 hours, which the countdown is ridiculous. It's so stupid. But like I said, there's a lot of dumb things about this movie. So where were we? Okay, so fake Chewie death, the Force projections, so annoying. Let's see, where are we? Oh yeah, the on Kojima, where they have to take C-3PO, where there's already stormtroopers on the planet, I guess, doing checkpoints and stuff. You have our friend Poe, who initially was nothing more than an honorable resistance fighter. I think the canon originally was he was part of the New Republic Navy. But they decided to, quote-unquote, add to his character, and they made him a spice runner. So that's awesome, and everyone's criticizing him. And to his credit, he fires back about Rey being a scavenger, which isn't so bad because these are derelict ships that were from a battle on Jakku. And, okay, so she's a scavenger, okay? That doesn't really belong to anybody. But then he does point at the fact that Finn was once a stormtrooper, okay? And then, Poe runs into, I guess, an ex-girlfriend. She's kind of like a female version of Boba Fett. There's kind of a standoff, but she and Rey get into a little toss. Rey easily wins. And then, I forget her name. I think she's played by Kerry Russell. She decides that they can be friends now. So now where she was going to turn them all in, including Rey, for a bounty, she's decided, nope, I'm going to help y'all instead. So a quick 180 on her part. So she helps him find this little thing called Bubba Freck. Is it Bubba Freck? Like Boba Fett? Bubba Freck? This little guy that works on droids. And, C-3PO has that scene where in the trailers he's like, I'm taking one last look at my friends. Now, I realize the year has gone by since Force Awakens and Last Jedi, so there's been a year time for C-3PO to get used to these characters, Poe, Finn, Rey, BB-8, and, Chewie wasn't there. He was allegedly dead, but okay, I can kind of sort of see it, even though they don't really treat him like a friend. Most of the time, they're just ignoring him. I mean, what else is new? It's C-3PO. But, like, when I think of C-3PO's friends, I think of other people from other movies. But anyways, so they have to completely memory wipe C-3PO. But good news is he had R2 back up his memories from like a week or two prior. So there you go. So he's not completely dead. But anyways, they find the location of where the second Wayfinder MacGuffin has been hidden. And it turns out it's on one of the moons of Endor. Not the Forest moon with the Ewoks. It's an ocean moon. Well, it's not all ocean, but it has really bad oceans. And you remember at the end of Return of the Jedi when, Vader became Anakin again, redeemed himself, saved his son, and threw Palpatine down the reactor shaft and, the Emperor blew up. We reviewed it a while back, a few weeks ago. Time flies. Another scene also happened in Return of the Jedi after Lando and Wedge kind of sort of blew up the entire second Death Star. It blew up to bazillions of pieces, and yet somehow there was a chunk that landed in this ocean. It didn't break up in the atmosphere of this planet whenever it was landing. It just happened to land in the ocean. And it just so happens that one of the bits of this particular piece of the Death Star, the second Death Star, to fall in the ocean was what's left of the throne room, which is holding in a secret compartment the second Wayfinder MacGuffin. It's a Sith holocron. And then what Rey has her brief moment with her evil self. I wish they would have had more of that, more of Darkseid Rey, but we really don't get that much. Plus, Darkseid Rey has sharp, pointy teeth. She was fine until that moment. I'm like, okay, hey, oh, whoa, no pointy teeth for me. Nuh-uh. No, I'm good, Rey. And throughout this, Rey and Kylo have been having these back and forth projections, backs and forths, and then Kylo shows up on the second Death Star because he knows that's where she went. Palpatine before then threatens Kylo like, hey, are you actually going to kill her? Because if you don't kill her, if you're plotting against me, I'm sending my Sith fleet after you first. Bear in mind, once again, Palpatine really doesn't have any intention of killing Rey. He wants his granddaughter back, so you'll find out. I mean, you probably already know. I don't know why we're going over this. I guess just to reflect on it in my mind. I have notes, by the way. So, fight breaks out between Rey and Ben. I mean, Rey and Kylo on second Death Star 2. And, by the way, Rey, for a girl that grew up on a desert planet, she is a fast learner. She learned how to use a skimmer to skim across these rough, choppy waters to the second Death Star in no time. You go, girl. She's not a Mary Sue, though. To JJ's credit, they did try to unMary Sue her a little bit, but by the end, she's a Mary Sue, and that's sad. Because I think she started off in episode 7 with potential, but Rian Johnson had to make her a Mary Sue, and what is done cannot be undone. And for the record, I liked Daisy Ridley, and I liked Rey at the beginning. I actually did. I don't like the Mary Sue that she's become, but in the end, so they're fighting, and then Leia dies because she's going to use all of her remaining Force powers, her life essence, because Maz Kanata has to explain all this. And every time, Leia's in the scene, other people have to explain things, whether it's Rose or Maz Kanata or somebody else entirely, because obviously they only have so much material to work with from the editing room floor of Force Awakens. So once again, they tried their best, but it just doesn't work as well. So Leia dies. In her final moments, she reaches out to Ben long enough to, I guess, stop him from killing Rey. And Rey stabs Ben. And she realizes that Leia's dead. And now she feels bad. And now she force heals Ben. And then she takes Ben's ship. And before she takes the ship, she's like, hey, I would have taken your hand. But I would have taken Ben's hand, not Kylo's hand. Because I don't like bad boys. I like good men's. Okay. So she doesn't want to be a Palpatine. She doesn't want to become Empress. Because that's what she fears, is that she's going to end up sitting on the throne. And that's what Palpatine's plan for actually is. So she takes his TIE Interceptor, or First Order Interceptor, whatever it's called. It looks like a TIE Interceptor to me. And she travels back to Octo. And she, destroys a perfectly good TIE Interceptor. She could have just put it in the water, just like Luke did his X-Wing. Or sold it on the market for some credits. But she decides she's going to exile herself just like Luke. And she's about to throw Anakin's lightsaber, I still call it Anakin's lightsaber, into the burning TIE Interceptor. Of course, Ghost Luke catches it. And he's like, a Jedi's weapon should be treated with more respect. Which is a shot at, what he does in Last Jedi when he does, whoop, he tosses it. At first, I thought the scene was funny. Because I wasn't expecting it. My expectations were subverted. But there was just too many of those in Last Jedi. Wait a minute, we're reviewing... let's see, Rise of Skywalker. We already did Last Jedi. Focus. Okay, so he gives her a pep talk. He reveals that he had Leia's lightsaber and he was training Leia. Leia kicks his ass in training, which I kind of call BS on. So they kind of try to make Leia retconned as a Mary Sue, because I doubt that Leia would have been able to beat Luke in training, because Luke had a little bit more practice using a lightsaber than Leia. I mean, they could have just made the fight a little bit more even Steven, but they lift up their visors after they're done fighting, and Luke's on the ground. Younger Luke, I guess, post Return of the Jedi. And his younger Luke looks okay. Younger Luke looks okay. Younger Leia, remember how Leia looked at the end of Rogue One? How people were like, all Uncanny Valley? She looks worse. Younger Leia looks worse in this flashback, which is kind of weird, a flashback. You think they could have done like a holocron instead, just showing the fight from that perspective. Okay, well, there's also flashbacks of her on Desert Planet 2, her being Rey. So the pep talk's given, and Rey's like, well, I destroyed, Kylo's ship. How am I supposed to get off this rock? And see, Luke's like, hey, you have everything you need. And then he lifts up his original trilogy X-Wing fighter, Red 5. Kind of sweet, just like Yoda did on Dagobah. And you have, of course, the music that plays in the background, very similar to that scene of Yoda and Empire on Dagobah. But Luke's doing it now. Force goes to Luke. He can catch lightsabers. He can lift stuff. It's awesome. But it just makes me think, like, how long was that X-Wing in the water? Like, I mean, it wasn't down there for like a few minutes or a few days or a few weeks. It's been down there for years. And I think in episode 8, I think Luke was using part of the X-Wing as like a door to his hut on Octo. Okay, retconned it is. But somehow, this X-Wing that's been sitting there without, by the way, without an R2 unit. I think they can be flown without an R2 unit, but you kind of want an R2 unit to fly an X-Wing. So without an R2 unit, and with only the MacGuffin, which wasn't destroyed, well, there's two MacGuffins. Kylo destroys the second MacGuffin on the Death Star. And Rey has the first MacGuffin because it was still in his TIE interceptor. Like it burned, but it wasn't destroyed. Okay, fine. And she uses the first Sith Holocron MacGuffin to find her way to Exegol. And on her way to Exegol, while she's going through this nebula, that same nebula that Kylo had to go through, she's charting a path for the Resistance. So she's sending the information back to the Resistance. Meanwhile, you have Kylo is officially, quote-unquote, dead. Ben has returned. And I think that in the book, it's implied that it was Leia's, one of her last acts was not only to reach out to Ben and Rey, it was also to kind of force project an image or memory of Han Solo. So you have Harrison Ford also doing a cameo. Forgot to include it. My bad. But yes, there's a Harrison Ford Han Solo cameo. It's okay. And so I guess Ben tries to apologize to his father, or he tells him he loves him, or he's trying to either way. And then the final thing that Han says is like, I know. Well, it's kind of touching. There were touching moments throughout episode 9. And of course, Ben tosses his, Kylo Ren lightsaber. So you have the fleet preparing to take off. And Hux has been shot because he was a spy. They found out he was a spy. Oh, yeah. That's right. I forgot. Before all this nonsense, Chewie was rescued. Okay, Chewie was rescued. This girl named Shauna and her friends were on the ocean Ewok planet. Not Ewok planet, but the ocean planet around Endor. Former stormtroopers just like Finn. There's a good moment between Finn and Jonna, I think that's her name, and how they're all Force sensitives. But it was kind of a cool thing. I really wish they would have done more of Finn's arc as a stormtrooper, that turned resistance fighter. They could have done more of it, but they didn't. But it was still a good moment between him and Jonna, I thought, because it showed that not everybody that was a stormtrooper were bad, because they were conscripted when they were young. So now that Leia's gone, you have both Poe and Finn as the generals of the Resistance. You have Lando show up. You have Wedge there. You have, I think, Admiral Akbar's son there. You have a few others there. The Resistance fleet, and they head off the Exegol to follow Rey in order to try and stop the Sith fleet that's rising up over the planet. And the only way they can escape is with this transponder. That's what it is, a transponder. Oh, boy. Even one ship earlier, one of these not super Star Destroyers, one of these super versions, or I don't know, larger versions of an Imperial Star Destroyer repurposed as a Zeiston. I think that's what they're officially called, the Zeiston class, with the big honking gun at the bottom, managed to leave Exegol. Goes to Kijimi and blows up Kijimi. And that's how they know that these Sith Star Destroyers all have Death Star guns. And of course they do. 10,000 Sith Star Destroyers, each one with a Death Star gun. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm tired of this. Always upping the super weapons, right? From the Death Stars to Starkiller Base. To now, 10,000 Sith Star Destroyers with super guns. Oh boy. But somehow, all the other Sith Star Destroyers can't find their way out of the planet. They need the transponder. Well, one of them did it. Why not the rest of them? I mean, they're going up, right? So if you keep going up, eventually you'll break the atmosphere and you'll be in space and you can activate your shields and you can jump away. But they can't. Reasons. A lot of reasons, a lot of MacGuffins and plot armor in this movie. And so Rey shows up to Exegol. She ends up in the stadium. Palpatine's talking to her. Says, oh, I wasn't planning on killing you because you're going to take my place. You are a Palpatine. You're my daughter, my granddaughter. And when you strike me down with all your hatred, you will complete your journey to the dark side and you will become the empress of the new empire, and you will take your seat at the throne, and I will go into you, which is kind of weird. Grandpappy Palps, a little weird. He's like, I'm all the Sith, and when you strike me down, you'll be all the Sith. And so she's, seeing her friends who have showed up, the first fleet that shows up to fight the Sith Star Destroyers. They're kind of sort of losing because they're heavily outnumbered until Lando's fleet arrives, because Lando, Chewie, Wedge, I think those three, they go off to the core worlds to get help. And then all of a sudden, tons of ships show up at the right moment to help General Poe and General Finn as they are about to lose, as they're all about to be wiped out. This huge armada from across the galaxy just shows up of ships. Okay, they show up. How they all got through the that red nebula at the same time, I don't know. But they did. And so you have this battle taking place above. You're not really caring about the battle. There's been better battles in Star Wars. Like, for example, the Battle of Yavin. That was good. The Battle of Return of the Jedi. The Battle over Coruscant in Episode 3. Not as good as those battles, in my opinion. There's a lot going on, but who cares? Oh, there's Space Horses as well. You probably heard about the Space Horses. Great. And so Ben shows up in, I guess he found himself a TIE fighter on the wreckage of the second Death Star. But a TIE fighter does not have hyperdrive. So how did he use a TIE fighter to travel all the way to Exegol if it doesn't have a hyperdrive? I'm just saying. So Ben shows up. He has a blaster. He does a move like his dad does. And then he gets surrounded by his boys, the Knights of Ren. They have a fight. They kick the crap out of him. But as Rey's about to strike down Palpatine, she does kind of like a magic trick. And she puts one of the lightsabers in her back, teleport into the back of Kylo's hand. Kylo uses that. I think it's Anakin's lightsaber to beat up the Knights of Ren and kill them. And then Rey uses Leia's lightsaber to kill up the Imperial Guards or Sith Guards or whatever. And the red stormtroopers, they're no better than regular stormtroopers. But that was ridiculous. Hey, let's make stormtroopers Sith troopers, and to make them different, we'll paint their uniforms and their armor red. Brilliant. So you have both Kylo, Rey show up, as you know, and they're a Force dyad, and Palpatine realizes they're a Force dyad, and he can use them to restore himself into not a really young version of Palpatine. That would make sense. He's still old, but he's powerfuler, and he looks healthier, and he has glowing yellow orangish eyes now, and he restored all his fingers, and he has a new outfit. Magically, it gives him a brand new sweet outfit. And of course, he makes a comment about Ben, because Ben and Rey are both weak by this exchange, and Palpatine's like, hey, I'm going to make you rise. So I guess Rise of the Skywalker might be the rise of Ben Solo in this scene when Palpatine lifts him up like he was nothing. And he says, I once fell by a Skywalker, and now I will make one fall. So he tosses Ben into a hole. Woo! Into a hole. And Palpatine decides, you know what? I'm going to use Force Ion Lightning. He has different types of lightning, apparently, to disable all these ships that are destroying my Sith fleet. And meanwhile, he has like Sith worshippers surrounding him in the stadium chanting. It's great. And they disable all the ships, and all the Resistance ships are going to crash. For some reason, you think they would have crashed before he had a chance to be distracted. Rey attempts one more time to reach out to the Jedi, be with me, and then she starts hearing all the voices. I think she hears Yoda's voice, Obi-Wan's voice, Anakin's voice. It would have been cooler if they had just have all the Force ghosts show up. That would have been cooler, but they didn't. So they have a variety of different Force ghosts. Well, some of them, like I think Mace is one of the voices, but I don't think he became a Force ghost. I don't know. But anyways, you have voices telling her to get up. Maybe they were just voices in her head, right? You also had Luke's voice and I think Leia's voice there too. And so she gets up and she grabs one lightsaber and she's like, boom, And then Palpatine's like, oh, no, you didn't, granddaughter, bad granddaughter. So like any abusive grandfather, he tries to kill her with Force lightning. She blocks it with one lightsaber, and you can tell that she's almost being overpowered. And he's like, you cannot stop me. I am all the Sith. And then all of a sudden, she grabs Anakin's lightsaber on the ground because she has Leia's in one hand. Then she grabs Anakin's. So she has Leia's and Anakin's. And she's like, I'm all the Jedi. And then she does the cross thing. And then just like Mace Windu before her, she repels the Force lightning back into Palpatine, into clone Palps. Or new Palps, or Palps 2 or 3.0, I don't know. And for some reason, Palpatine just won't stop using his Force lightning. I mean, he stopped it a moment ago when he got distracted by Rey. He stopped Force lightning all those ships. So why didn't he just stop Force lightning her when she was clearly repelling his lightning? He doesn't. And so she uses the two lightsabers, because I guess it takes two lightsabers to do it. She repels the Force lightning onto Palpatine and ends up disintegrating him. Okay. And then, of course, all the ships, Sith ships, get destroyed. And hooray, everybody's happy. Big celebration time. And I guess female Boba Fett shows up along Boba Frick. They were in a Y-Wing. And it's implied that there's a potential love interest between Poe and her. The bromance between Finn and Poe weren't as good this time as I thought. I mean, it was okay. They did get some more time together than they didn't get in Episode 8, so I like that. And, they don't really go anywhere with, Rose and Finn. It's just like they're buddies now. But at the end of Episode 8... they're a little bit more than buddies. So it's so weird. It's like they try to, they being JJ and Chris Terrio, they try to, quote unquote, right the wrongs or the things that people had a problem with in Return of the Jedi. But in doing so, I don't know. It feels like they were trying to please everybody, but they ended up pleasing nobody. And at the very end, you have the First Order also being defeated across the galaxy. Their ships are falling out of the skies of Cloud City. There was apparently one over the Force Moon of Endor and other places. So there's a celebration of Resistance fighters. And apparently it's implied in, extra material that Jannah is, Lando's long-lost daughter that was stolen by stormtroopers when she was a baby. So, cliche... what a coincidence. Large galaxy, he just happens to find his daughter. But in the movie, because of all the editing, and there's a lot of really bad editing, and it already came out already that this version that was released was not JJ's original version. So there was a lot of Episode 9 that was cut and put on the editing room floor. Probably too much, because a lot of the scenes really don't work so well. It just feels rushed. It was pretty long already, but I think... since this is supposed to be the last movie in the Skywalker saga, wrapping up not only the sequel trilogy, but, all 9 of these films, I think it was okay for them to make this the longest running of the Star Wars movies so far. But they chose not to. Maybe we'll get a special edition or definitive edition or JJ edition eventually. I don't know if I want to rewatch that, to be honest. Maybe I will. But, celebration... And then, see... oh, yeah, Chewie gets a medal from Maz. Okay. You have 2 girls in the background making out. I'm fine with that. I'm all about equality. Apparently, Disney isn't, though, because they like the virtue signal. Because, in certain markets, that scene was left in. In other markets, it was edited out because, see, Disney, like any other company, only really cares about money. Oh, you want us to cut out this scene or it won't be in your country or your country's theaters? Okay. That's what Disney really cares about. I'm just saying. Most of us are about equality, but, there's a difference between being about equality and virtue signaling, Disney. I'm just saying. And so, for no reason at all, you have Rey take the Millennium Falcon and BB-8 to Tatooine. Bear in mind, Tatooine has not appeared once in the sequel trilogy. Anakin hated Tatooine. Luke wanted to get off Tatooine. Leia never lived on Tatooine, and the only time she ever actually set foot on Tatooine, she ended up in a metal bikini with a big giant slug. Not exactly good memories for Leia or Luke. Luke lost his aunt and uncle. Last time he saw his aunt and uncle at their farm, charred remains, bones, destroyed by stormtroopers. Luke did not like Tatooine, and I seriously doubt Leia did either, especially from her prior experience on the planet in Return of the Jedi. So why, J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, why did you decide to wrap up this movie on a planet that Luke and Leia don't really care for? And the Lars farm just sat empty for the past 30-something years. You didn't have someone else come in, buy it, fix it back up, start their own moisture farm? Or you didn't have, Jawas there just chilling, or a freaking tribe of Tusken Raiders or something? It just sits there in ruins. I'm just saying, it's a farm in ruins, but you think someone would have come along, one to, start their own moisture farm, and they would have fixed the place up a little bit. I know, bad memories. So Rey now has the Millennium Falcon, BB-8. Even though you think it would have made sense for Lando and Chewie and Jannah to take the Millennium Falcon, that would have made sense. I don't know. But Rey ends up with it. I mean, Rey already has Luke's X-Wing. I mean, she could have just fixed it up, give it a nice fresh coat of paint. But no. And so she goes there in order to bury Luke and Anakin's lightsaber. Now, look, I call it Anakin's lightsaber because originally it was Anakin's lightsaber. Luke's lightsaber is the green lightsaber, which we still don't know what became of the green lightsaber, by the way. I have no idea. And she decides to bury Leia and Anakin's lightsaber. Even though there's probably, you could make the argument that you would want to pass on what you learned, similar to what Yoda and Obi-Wan told Luke to do, what Luke tried to do. You think she'd want to create a new Jedi temple, right? Because you have Force sensitives like Jannah, like Finn, and like the broom boy from Canto Bight back in Episode 8. So lightsabers, kind of an important item for Jedi to have. You have two perfectly good ones right there. Nope, she decides bury him in the sand. Yeah, that's great. And we all know how much Anakin liked the sand. Yeah, we do. So you're in the middle of the desert, burying some lightsabers. All of a sudden, this woman comes by and, for no reason, asks her, "Who are you?" There's no one's been here in forever, obviously. But this woman just happens to be coming by. Bear in mind, this is not Mos Eisley or Mos Ispa or Anchorhead. Nowhere near any of them, right? Not like right out of town. Many, many miles away from the major cities, ports of Tatooine. And she's just asked this girl, like, "Who are you?" And this happened once or twice throughout the movie. Like, someone would ask her who she is. And she's like, "I'm Rey." And she's like, "Rey who?" And then for some reason, she sees Luke and Leia. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. So, did I mention it? That after she defeats Palpatine, yeah, she dies. She did die. I'm sorry I keep going back and forth, but I'm trying to get all this off the top of my head. So she's dying, or she's dead, and Ben, who's barely still alive, he's stumbling over to her. He gives his life to Force heal her, and he puts it on her belly, So is it implied that he's using the Force to impregnate her? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So they have a passionate kiss, pleasing the Reylo fans, okay? And then he Force ghosts away, and then Leia's body Force ghosts away. But what's interesting at the end is that she sees in the desert, right, Force ghosts of Luke and Leia smiling on, okay, yeah, sure. I think Rey's seeing shit, because I don't think either one of them would be happy about their lightsabers being buried on Tatooine. Well, they just don't care about that aspect, I suppose they're Force ghosts. Speaking of Force ghosts, where's Ben's Force ghost? I mean, Anakin's Force Ghost shows up at the end of Return of the Jedi, the original version by Sebastian Shaw, and then the special edition version by Hayden Christensen. Where's Ben Solo's ghost? Why isn't he chilling with her? They're Force dyad. Shouldn't they still be connected? I mean, I don't know. And so she says, "Rey Skywalker." You're Palpatine. You're not a Skywalker. And I get what Luke says in his pep talk. You know, just because you're a Palpatine doesn't mean you're a bad person. You can still be a good person despite who your father, your grandfather, or clone father happen to be. I get it. It's perfectly fine. I understand. Like, you could be a Capone and not be a bad person like Al Capone was, if he was your father or grandfather or whatever. You get the idea. But at the same time, she's not a Skywalker. And she's looking at Leia Organa and Luke Skywalker. So is she actually Rey Organa Skywalker? Then you have to go another step further and say, well, maybe she's a Skywalker by forced marriage or forced metachlorian immaculate conception thanks to Ben before he died. I don't know. Then wouldn't she be like Rey Solo? Why didn't she take that name? There! Why didn't Rey just take the name Solo? That would have made more sense. She would be Rey Solo because this would please the Reylo fans, okay? But it will also make more sense than Rey Skywalker because Ben was a Solo. I mean, yeah, technically he's a Skywalker as well, but you get the idea. That would make sense. Rey Solo. And if he happened to have used the Force to impregnate her, okay. Boom. Hooray. I kind of wish that Luke would have had Mara Jade, though, show up. You know, maybe Mara Jade was chilling and took their kids into hiding through all this. I really wish they would have included Mara Jade in the sequel trilogy. There's a lot of things that they could have included. But overall, I have to gauge this movie in two ways. If you look at it as a popcorn blockbuster-esque film, not really think too much about it, despite the obvious editing scenes, despite things that don't really make sense, it is entertaining, and in some aspects you could say it's better than Last Jedi, not by much. But when it comes to ranking it, I have to put it at the bottom because of the fact that this was supposed to be the conclusion of the sequel trilogy, which it does an okay job of. Not as good as Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Sith, the conclusion of those trilogies, but it's also the conclusion of the saga itself, the Skywalker saga. There's too many issues with Rise of Skywalker. Too many. And I only pointed out a few of them. I'm sure I missed a few more. And you probably heard those before as well. So, unfortunately, in one aspect, I like it better than Last Jedi. But the gravity of the things that were undone, not just some of the things from Last Jedi, but from Return of the Jedi, it's unforgivable to me. As much as I like Ian McDiarmid, as much as I love Palpatine as the quintessential villain of the Star Wars trilogy, he was dead. Snoke was meant to be the main bad guy of this sequel trilogy. And they just wrote him off, and they just said, oh, Palpatine made Snoke. Sure, that was your original plan, JJ. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. It wasn't. But there was several contradictions. There's one I'm trying to think of right now. I forget what it was. Oh, yeah. They talk about how the Death Star was where the final battle of the last war took place. That's not true because you have Jakku. Jakku, Desert Planet 2, Electric Boogaloo, is where the last battle of the Galactic Civil War took place. That's introduced in Force Awakens. That's the planet that Rey's on. And yet they had this comment that the Battle of Endor was the last battle. Canonically, it's not. Even if you go by Disney canon, which wipes away the expanded universe. Good job, Disney. Thank you. Very cool. No, it's not the last battle. It's the one of the most. It's like the Gettysburg, I guess, where you see the Emperor and Vader destroyed, and the Death Star and one of their superstar destroyers and a huge chunk of the Imperial fleet wiped out, including Admiral Piet. But the war still rages for like a year later, and it only ends at Jakku. That's the last battle. I'm just saying. So lots of contradictions, a lot of things that just don't work. Force teleportation, the light skipping, the retconning of Palpatine not really being dead. Obviously borrowed from Dark Empire. And the whole Rey taking the Skywalker name. Doesn't work for me. So, yeah, for all these reasons, I have no choice but to give Rise of Skywalker 9th place. Now, just like with New Hope and Empire, it's a close first and second place there. You could go either way with New Hope and Empire when it comes to first and second place. It's the same thing for Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. They're both at the very bottom together. A very close 8th and 9th place. So you could go either way with that one. I really wanted to put Last Jedi in 8th place. In 9th place. But, as I've mentioned in the previous review, there were reasons why I considered Last Jedi to be a little bit better than Rise of Skywalker, as we've gone over already. So that's pretty much my views, my opinions regarding Rise of Skywalker. On its own, it's entertaining to some degree. But whenever you weigh it against the context of the Skywalker saga, all 3 trilogies, it falls flat. Whereas, Revenge of the Sith wraps up the prequel trilogy rather nicely. And Return of the Jedi, not the best of the original trilogy, still does the same thing. This, not so much. And it just doesn't work in the end. Entertaining as it may be, it's still, in my opinion, probably the worst of the Star Wars movies. But not by much, because you have, in a very close 8th place, The Last Jedi. So there you go. All my reviews finally done. Episodes 1 through 9. And to all of you that took the time to watch all 9 episodes, along with my Season 7 review of Star Wars The Clone Wars, my Season 1 review of The Mandalorian, my Star Wars is Garbage film, my video on Duel of Fates, which I think would have been a much better version of Episode 9 by Colin Trevorrow and his writer. I thought that was brilliant. Even though that was the first draft, even though some changes had to be made, I still think that would have been a better conclusion to even Episode 7 and 8. Even though they're different, I felt like Duel of Fates would have wrapped things much better than Rise of Skywalker. Plus, Rise of Skywalker is a terrible name. It doesn't make sense because, like I said, Rey's not a Skywalker. She's either a Palpatine or at best maybe a Solo. And with that, I'm going solo. And I am always looking forward to your thoughts, your views, and opinions regarding Episode 9, the sequel trilogy, what you loved about it, what you hated about it, what could have been better. Who's to blame? Is it JJ? Is it Rian Johnson? I'm going to blame Kathleen Kennedy. She deserves most of the blame. Just like I said in my Star Wars is Garbage video, she deserves most of the blame. Why is she still president of Lucasfilm? I guess it's contract. She can't do anything wrong because you know why. But eventually her day will be done. And hopefully they will find somebody better to succeed her because she's done a horrible job running Lucasfilm. She just has. She sucks. And I've said that so many times now. I'm tired of saying it. I just want her gone. Just retire, go away, take your money. Just go away, Kathleen Kennedy. And she's a big reason why I blame her and Disney for the failure of the sequel trilogy. It had so much potential, but that's what we got. And I would like to say it's not canon, but it is. And that's a big reason why I have a problem with Episode 9. Because even though I didn't like everything that happened in Episode 8, well, there's some things I liked, but a lot of it I didn't like. It's still canon. And you have to work with what you got. And JJ should have done what Colin Trevorrow was going to do, was simply work with what he got, with a few changes that should have been made. But Kathleen Kennedy wouldn't listen. She wouldn't allow reshoots to have Luke Skywalker survive so that he could be used, obviously in a larger role in Episode 9, like he should have been, because Carrie Fisher had passed, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, the buck stops with Kathleen Kennedy. You could also blame JJ, but I think JJ did his best. And it wasn't even his intention to direct another Star Wars film. Just like in Episode 7, his wife only wanted him to do one. He did his part. He got the soft reboot off the ground. But then they brought him back, and I kind of feel bad for JJ. I kind of wish he would have just said no and just leave it to somebody else. But anyways, like I mentioned, my thoughts regarding Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. And once again, I'm interested in what you have to say, what you liked about it, what you disliked about it, and how would you rank Rise of Skywalker compared to all the other Star Wars films, all 9 of them, not the other 2. I don't think I'm going to review Rogue One or Solo. I liked Rogue One. Solo, not so much, no. But anyways, your thoughts, views, and opinions on how you would rank Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, welcome below in the comments section.